6:30. I don't think we're waiting for anybody else. So why don't we get started? Good evening. Welcome to the Grafton Board of Health meeting, April 3rd, 2023. Pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, this meeting of the Grafton Board of Health is being conducted with both in-person and remote participation by board members and members of the public. Remote participation by the public for any matter for which the board allows public participation will be via the Zoom raise hand feature. If you raise your hand on Zoom, you will be enabled at an appropriate point to enter the meeting via voice or video to make a comment or ask question. In all cases, whether in person or remote, please identify yourself by name and address for the record. Every vote will be taken by roll call. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and will be broadcast live on the Grafton Community Television government channel. Okay, so we will take attendance by roll call. Board members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Karen Gostowski Galvin. I always mess it up.
There we go. I thought I was unmuted. Karen Gostowski Galvin here.
Austin Magnet.
Austin Magnet present.
Dan Finn.
Dan Finn here.
Bill Muller.
Bill Muller here.
Jen Maynard here. Would anyone like to make a motion to begin the meeting?
Yes, this is Dan Finn. I'd like to make a motion to open this meeting.
Okay, second.
This is Bill Muller. I'll second that motion.
Roll call.
Dan Finn, aye.
Bill Muller, aye.
Karen Gostowski Galvin, aye.
Austin Magnet, aye.
Jen Maynard, aye. Okay. First up, we did talk a little bit. We're going to probably move item number 4, non-criminal disposition discussion, to after the Alliance update, since we'd probably like some feedback from you folks. But Micah, would you like to give us the Alliance update?
Sure. Not too much to update. I did have one foodborne illness complaint investigation that I did. Was not able to find anything that led me to have any concerns. The establishment did not have any other complaints or sick employees, and it kind of sounds like it was possibly norovirus. So we will also keep an eye out for that if it starts to pop up. We have a few complaints with the housing authority that I'm kind of addressing, and one trash complaint that I did write an order letter for, and I did go speak to the property owner. And if I don't get any results, we will have to kind of escalate and possibly fine in the next week or so if nothing changes. And I did 16 routine food inspections, and that's pretty much all I've got for you, unless you have any questions.
I have one. This is Dan. Mike, I'm not familiar with a couple of these, but what is Wicked Fruitful? Is that something out of a home, or does it have a location site?
That is someone who is just operating at the farmers markets. So they use a commissary kitchen as a base of operations.
Yep. And
then they just sell their product at farmers markets and trade shows.
And is that Janie as well?
Correct. Yes.
Similar. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, thank you, Micah. While you're here with us, so we received the email about the current usage of non-criminal disposition. Essentially, what this is, it's section 21D. Any city or town may by ordinance or by law not inconsistent with this section provide for non-criminal disposition of violations of any ordinance or bylaw or any rule or regulation of any municipal officer, board, or department, the violation of which is subject to specific penalty. So essentially it says use of the non-criminal procedure allows a local enforcement person to write a ticket which sets a specific sum of money to be paid as a penalty for the violation of the bylaw. The penalty is paid to the city or town clerk, or the offender may request a district court hearing to be held on the matter. And in particular, the two sections are smoking regulations and polyesterine reduction. So I guess the question is whether or not we want to still be able to issue those enforcements at the local level, if I'm understanding correctly. Any discussion on this?
Yeah, is the current, I think they're just, the bylaw committee is just looking for our opinion. And we're not sure, I don't think, is the current system working, Micah, as far as that ticket and,
I have not actually had to write any tickets. I haven't seen any polystyrene. I think there might have been a little bit during COVID with supply issues. So we kind of were letting that go for a little bit, but I haven't really had to enforce the polystyrene ban. And then I'm not sure as far as how the smoking goes. We'd have to check in with Cherry on that.
Yeah, this is Karen. I was going to say Nancy probably, well, I know she couldn't make it tonight. Nancy probably would be a good person to check with like how things are going from her side of the world in the office with, and same thing with the polystyrene. I can't think of any instances yet either. But with the tobacco, and then also with Cherry to find out from Cherry how it's going, because Nancy and Cherry kind of work hand in hand when it comes to the rare, thankfully, tobacco instances where we have to issue some type of ticket and violation and stuff. I mean, I personally haven't, and there's so few and far between in all the years I've been doing this, I personally can't remember there being an issue with how it's currently set up, but I'm also not the one who's out there physically using the forms that exist and submitting the actual ticket and fine and then receiving the fine in. So it's more looking outside in. So hence the reason why I thought it'd probably be good to get like Nancy and Jerry and stuff to find out.
Cherry usually does send us updates when she does a follow-up or something like that. So I can check with her and just find out if she has or not.
yeah, and I think if you get back to Nancy about that, she can correspond with the bylaw committee, I think is the way to go.
Yeah, I mean, this is Karen again. My understanding is the bylaw committee's looking, because I mean, we currently have 2 bylaws, regs that exist that use said non-criminal disposition. I think part of this, because there's a much, much, much larger bylaw study committee happening that's covering all the bylaws and stuff that exist in town. I think this is one piece of the puzzle where they're looking into options for enforcement. And so my understanding is they're reaching out to the boards or committees, departments, whatever, that are currently using this non-criminal disposition to say, like, if we were to, continue doing this, or if you happen to be a board that didn't have anything like this, but you had something to enforce, would you be able to? Do you think this is a proper way of doing it? That's my understanding from the email I've seen.
I think from my standpoint, it definitely comes, I don't know if we can apply it to like trash nuisances and things like that. But it does sometimes get to a point where you have to start fining someone. And then beyond that is taking it to the court process. So.
Yeah, and I think we've had some conversations as a board in the last couple of years on tobacco violations.
Sure.
So anything Cherry thinks that would make it a little easier for, sort of decision making, I think around that would be helpful. I think we've had some good discussion, and she's really been helpful in making some decisions around that as well.
Okay.
But it is probably nice to be able to exercise that, Micah, to your point, as a community with the Alliance. Great. Any other discussion on this topic?
Not on this topic. I did want to see, could we jump back potentially to the Alliance update to see if there's anything from Amelia?
Yes, so hi, everyone. Amelia Houghton, Chief of Nursing. From the Data Research and Epidemiology Office, the message is that they started the 2024 CHA process and the first advisory committee session to solicit input for topics to include in the CHA from the communities. So if anyone has any questions or input, they can reach out directly to Nikki Nixon. And if that's an email that you need, I can put it in the chat, certainly. And that's it for that office. There's no update from community health or emergency management. And then as far as we're concerned, the nursing office, I'm meeting with the Grafton Senior Center this week with Shannon to discuss what the needs are of the senior center, how we can help in other capacities other than COVID clinics and blood pressure screenings, just to get an idea. Now that I have more staff, I would like to sit down and try to figure out how we can be of more help. So that's work in progress, and we'll have something on that next month for certain. And I think that's all on our end. We've stopped the mobile clinics, if you will, last week when the incentive program ended with the state. I have pop-up clinics here and there, and that doesn't mean that if somebody says, hey, we have an event, can we do a clinic? Of course, I can make sure I can get the vaccine. So that's always on the table. Okay, and yeah, I think that's it for our end.
Thank you, Amelia. Sorry, I skipped over you. Thanks for flagging, Karen. That actually goes in perfectly to our next update, which is the COVID-19 updates. Since, of course, staff is going to be shifting towards the community health assessment, and we know the public health emergency is ending, we will no longer be receiving weekly COVID-19 statistics around case counts. We certainly can still, as a community, ask on a specific day or data that we are concerned about, but weekly reporting is no longer going to happen. Before we get into cases and mitigation efforts, Karen, do you want to add to that at all?
No, you covered that well. That was going to be my first thing if it was going to get tossed over to me to do. That was the biggest news at this point. I mean, other than just the general, obviously COVID is still out there, and vaccines are available, boosters are available. Take precautions, especially if you're around immunocompromised people, live with immunocompromised elderly, etc. Kind of those standard precautions that we've been hearing now for some time, especially considering there's also beyond COVID a whole host of other things that are floating around still between flu. There's probably still some RSV. I know someone actually who's a healthy adult who is very active and just got hit with mono, and who's almost 50. So kind of a rarity. That definitely piqued my curiosity. There's just, I can personally say I know a lot of people that have something right now that's not the flu and it's not COVID. And it's anything from the common cold to up through mono, I guess you'd say. So, there's someone on my team who's been fighting something for 2 weeks now that didn't pop positive for anything, but he's finally getting better. So even if you wouldn't wear a mask for COVID, if you're around those that are more vulnerable, there's plenty of other things going around that you might want to protect those people from, let alone yourself.
And seasonal allergies, most recently.
Oh, yes. And the norovirus,
Yes.
as we heard earlier, is very
Yes, the norovirus.
Just one thing to add to that is that the CDC website does still have guidance around healthcare workers who will be guided by their employer about returning to work, but also citizens out in the community that may test positive, and just taking precautions around exposing people to that. So certainly that's still an available resource to people as well. Anything else on COVID? All right. We need to come up with a meeting schedule for July, August, September, October, November, and December. In order to have a room that we can also do a hybrid approach like this, we need to probably avoid some of the planning board meetings. So I have the planning board meetings schedule here.
Yep,
There-
this is,
Go ahead.
yep, sorry, I would say this is Karen. I have to get used to saying that. Normally I don't.
That's okay. Go ahead.
I guess one thing I wanted to bring up while we were discussing the meeting schedule is where the state extended the ability to do remote meetings, like fully remote meetings, up until March 31st of 2025. We do have the ability, if we so choose, to continue on with the old remote side of the world. Especially if we were to bump up against room concerns, because I think already Nancy said there was a room issue for May with the meeting we have scheduled, and or like work availability, or if someone's traveling, etc. So we do have that option back on the table again.
I think one thing to consider would be, I have not been at these meetings pre-pandemic. Was it a meeting that folks would typically attend in person from the community?
At least, this is Dan. Yeah, we used to get a quorum pretty regularly, but sometimes just 3 people.
Okay.
I'm thinking it might be a good idea, since we have the extension, say now through the summertime at least, to go back to remote, with vacations and things like that. You know, I think we'd be a little more assured of getting that 4 or 5 people instead of 3, but it's just my opinion.
This is Karen. In terms of, Jen, when you say before pandemic where we had members of the community, I assume you didn't mean like board members, you meant actual community members that aren't part of the board or
Constituents, yeah.
staff.
Yeah.
The only time we would have community members was if there was a topic that was a hot topic, which we don't have many of those in my time of being on the board, or if we had someone that maybe it wasn't a community member just sitting in on the meeting, but it was a topic where we had invited someone, or there was a permit we were discussing and it was that individual's or that company's permit, then the person would be in person because we didn't do hybrid or remote before. But in general, typically there's not community attendance at our meetings.
Okay. That's good to know, because I think if being remote was a deterrent for people to come, we don't tend to have too many people that log on. But that's helpful.
Because this is Karen again, the one thing with the hybrid is we have to keep in mind is you need at least 3 board members in whatever room it is. And then the other, I mean, if it's all 5, great. But at a minimum, it's 3. So if someone all of a sudden couldn't make the meeting last minute, you'd have to cancel the meeting last minute because you wouldn't have the quorum in the room.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
Not that I'm saying we have to do remote, but I wanted to bring it up where we have the option for the extension. But, you know, there's some caveats that, like, say right now, if one of you was running late or was sick or something or had an emergency, we would have had to cancel the meeting if one of the 3 of you in the room couldn't make it.
So we could potentially extend through March of 2025. Is that what you said?
Yep.
What do folks want to do? Do you want to stay remote?
You know, I don't feel strongly about it. I think it would be probably worthwhile trying to do it in person with the remote part of it. I didn't know about the quorum of 3 in the room, Karen, but I think since you could still do a hybrid meeting, that would be the thing you would have to kind of pay attention to, the fact that you're compliant with the room attendance. I think, you know, absent some unforeseen you know, illness or some work problem, so forth and so on, it would probably be possible to know ahead of time whether people are going to be able to make it or not. At least you'd know a day or two ahead of time, and I think you could at that point convert to a all remote session. You know,
Right, like for May 1st, for example, if we didn't want to change our meeting date, we could perhaps do remote for that session. Does that make sense?
yeah.
Yeah, because we might run up into we don't have a room. It may not be a quorum issue. It
Right.
may be we don't have a place to sit if we're in person.
As long as it's posted with public to have, you know.
Well, I
for
think,
notice.
I mean, you could stratify it. You could say, well, we're going to seek to have a room. And if we have a room, then we'll schedule it, you know, as an in-person session with some remote access. And if we don't have a room, then we don't have that as an option.
We'll have to check. I don't know what the logistics are around that. We've never had to worry about that before.
Right.
I don't know where there's open meeting law requirements for posting and timing for that. That's something we'll have to have like Nancy look into to make sure we could turn it quickly if for some reason we planned on a meeting that had in-person and remote attendance, so a hybrid, and then all of a sudden we had to switch. We don't want to be violating open meeting law because we chose to try to do hybrid and then couldn't last minute.
Right.
I would think, though, that since you still have the option of hybrid, you know, I don't know what the regulation is, but in fact, I'd be surprised if it wasn't compliant. Because a person could still participate remotely.
Yeah, I think it comes down to the timing for the posting and the timing for the updating, that if you say there's a room and then all of a sudden there's not a room.
Right, we couldn't then switch it if we had already posted the agenda and something emergent came up in town that they needed this room.
Oh, yeah.
We would have
Yeah.
to probably cancel the meeting, right? Is what.
It's like rarely over the years of doing it where we had, and this is why we've always tried to avoid, like back before remote, you know, gave some more flexibility, obviously, when it was in person only. And if we scheduled meeting and only 3 out of 5 could attend in the first place knowingly, we were very cautious and weary of scheduling the meeting for that date, because all it takes is someone being late, someone getting stuck in a work meeting that they weren't planning on when they planned on that date, some type of sickness, and then the whole meeting gets canceled. Then you struggle to find another time to have it. If we weren't bound by open meeting laws and timeframes and requirements for posting, et cetera, then it would be like any work meeting that I have where there's no time bounds and you don't worry about that as long as you get the people you need. But you also don't have open meeting law to worry about for work.
So I think we have to kind of land on a decision as to whether or not we want to do hybrid or a mix of hybrid and remote or all remote before we set the dates, because as you said, we have to look at the other meeting agendas in the room here. And do we need to do a motion for for this, or is this, can we just decide without a vote?
Yeah, I don't think we need to vote on
Yeah, I don't think we need
Great.
Austin, how do you feel about it?
Yeah.
I mean, I like the idea to have the hybrid option, especially for the summer, like Dan mentioned, with all the mixed schedules. I mean, July, it looks like we're looking at the 3rd or the 10th. And I know July 3rd is going to be tough to kind of nail down.
And we can't do the
And so
meeting
what's the
rooms.
planning board schedule on that one?
Right, so they already are booked here on the 10th, so
So we're going to have to go remote that month already.
right, and we know May will probably go remote anyways because they're in
we already have a room issue from the May meeting.
So May will be remote.
And then June, let's try in person for June.
Okay,
Is that the 5th?
June is the 5th, yes. So we'll try, and it's already booked for conference room A and via Zoom. And then July, we could do fully remote,
Yeah, we'll probably do the 10th.
Right.
and we'll do the 10th. Does that work for folks?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then after that, it'll be to be announced.
Yeah.
Yeah, could we do that, Karen? We could say, whether or not, when it gets closer, whether or not it'll be remote or in person?
Should we at least pick
Yeah,
the
I mean,
Yeah,
as
we could pick the
long as, we decide, as long as we decide today that we're gonna kind of do like,
Yep.
it's gonna depend on
Yeah.
meetings, availability, rooms, et cetera, then at least we've discussed it.
Yeah.
And then we can try to set the dates at least,
Mhm.
but then we can look at it and say, okay, as we get closer to August,
Yep.
We'll
land.
come the July meeting, we can say, okay,
Yep.
or even the June meeting, whatever. It doesn't have to be the July meeting. We can say, hey, August is coming up. What's everyone's world looking like that you know of? What's the room looking like, Nancy? She can try to book them
Yep.
as quickly as possible,
Right.
Yeah.
but there's no guarantees it's going to stay that way, obviously.
So meeting at dates that are available, looking at the planning board schedule to avoid those would be August 7th or the 21st.
I vote the 7th.
Yep. 7th,
Seventh
Yeah.
it is. September,
got Labor Day.
4th is Labor Day, so that
Yeah.
won't work.
and they are booked the 11th and the 25th, so that leaves us with September 18th. Does that work for folks?
Sure.
If we want to do hybrid, the 18th would obviously be the logical option. If we were okay doing fully remote, then you could do the 11th.
Yeah, I'd probably vote remote on the 11th.
So the 11th and remote.
Yeah.
Yep.
Let's go with that. Okay. And October. Well, that's a busy month.
Well, I'm like,
So they
Columbus Day's the 9th,
have-
or
right.
Probably the
Indigenous
second.
Peoples Day, call it both.
Yeah. And then we also have planning board on the 2nd, and the town meeting is on the 16th. So that
Yeah.
leaves the 23rd and no, actually they have a meeting here on the 23rd. So we'll probably be fully remote, I would say, on that one. Unless
Yeah, I'd
people want to
vote
do the 30th.
probably guess remote on the 2nd,
Remote on the 2nd.
since the 9th is the holiday.
Yeah, you can't do the holiday at all. You don't want to do it on town meeting.
No.
Yeah, exactly.
And then
October.
I don't think we should wait too
Oh no, her connection is terrible.
long.
Yeah, the connection, Karen, your connection's gone.
Sluggish.
So,
October.
okay, October
There we
2nd.
go.
Looked ahead of the
October
calendar, like, oh,
2nd,
that's not going to be a fun month to try to figure out if we wanted to do hybrid.
October 2nd remote, and that way we're not too far out from our last meeting.
Right.
November, they have the 13th and the 27th, so that leaves the 6th or the 20th if we wanted to do hybrid.
I'd say the 6th is closer, right, to the 2nd. of the previous month.
So we'll do the 6th and we'll try for hybrid.
Yep.
I'm back. Was that November 6th?
November 6th, then we'll attempt hybrid
Okay.
that date. That's better. And then finally, December, they have the room booked the 11th, and the holiday is the 25th, which is also Monday, so that leaves the 4th or the 18th. Would we want to try the 4th?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so, in case, in the event that we have to have a second meeting at the end,
Yeah.
in that month,
Yeah, so 4th hybrid, but we will adjust accordingly if need be to make remote. Phew. We did it, guys. All right. All right, moving along to some nominations. We need to nominate the animal inspectors. That's what they call them. So the first is for nominating Melinda McKendrick as the animal inspector. Would anyone like to make a motion?
Sure. This is Karen Gwizdowski-Govin. I would like to make a motion to nominate Melinda McKendrick as animal inspector.
Second?
This is Bill Muller, second.
Roll call.
Karen Gwizdowski-Govin, aye.
Austin Magnan, aye.
Bill Muller, aye.
Dan Finn, aye.
Jen Maynard, aye. Apologies, was there any discussion on that?
No, except that These are not, we're nominating them to the select board for appointment, correct?
Mhm.
Okay.
The next one is to nominate Jay Husson as animal inspector to the select board for consideration. Anyone like to make a motion?
This is Bill Muller. I'd make a motion to nominate Jay Husson to the position of animal inspector.
A second?
This is Dan. I'll second that motion.
Roll call?
Bill Muller.
Karen
aye.
Gwiazdowski Govin, aye.
Austin Magnan, aye.
Dan Finn, aye.
Jen Maynard, aye. And finally, would anyone like to nominate Keith Elms as assistant animal inspector? To the
This is Dan. I'd like to nominate Keith Elms as assistant animal inspector.
Second?
This is Bill Muller. I'll second that nomination.
Roll call?
Dan Finn, aye.
Bill Muller, aye.
Karen Gwiazdowski Govin, aye.
Austin Magnan, aye.
Jen Maynard, aye. We're not too messed up for doing our roll call different this time around. We're doing okay, guys.
That's all right.
All right, we did our non-criminal disposition already. All right, lots of motions and things coming up. So, as we've done in prior meetings, we need to do quick discussion of any recommended edits to the minutes as presented by Nancy, and then a motion for each of them. Is there any discussion or recommendations for changes to the January 3rd, 2022 minutes?
None from me.
This is Dan Finn. I'd like to make a motion to accept the minutes of the January 3rd, 2022 minutes.
Second?
This is Bill Muller. I second that.
Roll call?
Dan Finn, aye.
Bill Muller, aye.
Karen Gwiazdowski Govin, aye.
I noticed real quick it says on the agenda that it still needs Nancy's review, and it's not highlighted. Are we supposed to just nominate the highlighted ones?
This is from the posted agenda. Is it still highlighted?
Maybe I pulled up a older agenda.
Yeah, I think so.
In that case, then Austin Magnan, aye. January 3rd is good.
Jen Maynard,
Let's
aye.
go with Nancy.
Thank you. January 10th, 2022. Any discussion or a motion?
This is Dan. I'd like to make a motion to accept the minutes as presented for January 10th, 2022.
Second?
This is Bill Muller. I'll second that motion.
Roll call?
Dan Finn, aye.
Bill Muller, aye.
Karen Gwiazdowski Govin, aye.
Austin Magnan, aye.
Jen Maynard, aye. The February 7th, 2022 minutes, any discussion, or would someone like to make a motion?
This is Dan Finn. I'd like to make a motion to accept the February 7th, 2022 minutes as presented.
Second?
This is Bill Muller. I second that motion.
Roll call.
Dan Finn, aye.
Bill Muller, aye.
Karen Gwiazdowski Govin, aye.
Austin Magnan, aye.
Jen Maynard, aye. The March 7th, 2022 minutes, any discussion, or would someone like to make a motion?
This is Dan Finn. I'd like to make a motion to accept the minutes of March 7th, 2022 as presented.
Second?
This is Bill Muller. I'd like to second that motion.
Roll call.
Dan Finn, aye.
Bill Muller, aye.
Karen Gwiazdowski Govin, aye.
Austin Magnan, aye.
Jen Maynard, aye. The March 21st, 2022 minutes, any discussion, or would someone like to make a motion?
This is Dan Finn. I'd like to make a motion to accept the minutes of the March 21st, 2022 meeting as presented.
Second?
This is Bill Muller. I'd like to second that motion.
Roll call.
Dan Finn, aye.
Bill Muller, aye.
Karen Gwiazdowski Govin, aye.
Austin Magnan, aye.
Jen Maynard, aye. April 4th, 2022, any discussion, or would someone like to make a motion?
This is Dan Finn. I'd like to make a motion to accept the minutes of the April 4th, 2022 meeting.
This is Bill Muller. I'd like to second that motion.
Roll call.
Dan Finn, aye.
Bill Muller, aye.
Karen Gwiazdowski Govin, aye.
Austin Magnan, aye.
Jen Maynard, aye. The May 2nd, 2023 minutes, discussion or a motion, please?
This is Dan Finn. I'd like to make,
Discussion.
Oh,
Nope.
discuss. Go
Discussion.
ahead, Karen.
Not discussion.
So, Karen, there's a typo because there's no way we had May 2nd,
Oh my gosh,
2023
how did we
minutes
have
yet.
that?
So,
Typo should be
So-
2022.
So that should be May 2nd, 2022. And
They
I
looked okay in the
I
minutes
just read
themselves,
it.
but I noticed it when I was looking at the agenda that there was a typo, and it's understandable. You know, she's been plowing through these, and we're in 23, and yeah.
Did we have 2 meetings in May? We did.
I think so.
It's so long ago at this point, right? All right. So first, how about the May 2nd, 2022 meeting minutes? Any further discussion or emotion? Thank you, Karen.
This is Dan Finn. I'd like to make a motion to accept the minutes of May 2nd as revised to 2022.
This is Bill Muller. I'd like to second that motion.
Roll call.
Dan Finn, aye.
Bill Muller, aye.
Karen Gustowski Govan, aye.
Austin Magnet, aye.
Jen Maynard, aye. The May 23rd, 2022 minutes. Any discussion or emotion?
This is Dan Finn. I'd like to make a motion to accept the minutes of the May 23rd, 2022 meeting.
Second.
This is Bill Muller. I'd like to second that motion.
And roll call.
Dan Finn, aye.
Bill Muller, aye.
Karen Gustowski Govan, aye.
Austin Magnet, aye.
Jen Maynard, aye. The June 13th, 2022 minutes. Any discussion or emotion?
This is Dan Finn. I'd like to make a motion to accept the June 13th, 2022 minutes.
Second.
This is Bill Muller. I'd like to second that motion.
Roll call.
Dan Finn, aye.
Bill Muller, aye.
Karen Gustowski Govan, aye.
Austin Magnet, aye.
You, Jen Maynard, aye. Who am I? September 2nd, the revised 2022 minutes. Would there be any discussion or emotion?
This is Dan Finn. I'd like to make a motion to accept the revised September 12th, 2022 minutes.
Second.
This is Bill Muller. I'll second that motion.
Roll call.
Dan Finn, aye.
Bill Muller, aye.
Karen Gustowski Govan, aye.
Austin Magnet, aye.
Jen Maynard, aye. And finally, the March 6th, 2023 minutes. Any discussion or emotion?
This is Dan Finn. I'd like to make a motion to accept the March 6th, 2023 minutes.
This is Bill Muller. I'd like to second that motion.
Roll call.
Dan Finn, aye.
Bill Muller, aye.
Karen Gustowski Govan, aye.
Austin Magnet, aye.
Jen Maynard, aye. Phew. Those are done.
And thanks to Nancy and Beth for getting those all together.
Yes, absolutely. So a couple of things for correspondence. We're almost there. The first one is we received a notification from the FEMA Region 1 on naloxone Narcan training for first responders and emergency managers. This is actually open to the public, so anyone can join, not only first responders. That will be available on Thursday, April 13th from 1 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. It is virtual. And Karen, should I read the whole thing? Or is this posted on the website for folks to look at?
I think Nancy was gonna post it, but I don't know if it got posted yet.
Beth said it's posted on the website.
Okay.
That was
Thank you, Beth.
received on March 21st, 2023. Little time still left to register. It's a Zoom virtual meeting. And then, any questions or comments on that? And then we did receive notice from the town clerk's office that the violation we discussed in prior meetings for Ultramart was received by check on March 29th, 2023. For upcoming meetings. Oh, go ahead, Dan.
If you don't mind, this is Dan. I just wanted to make a report on old business about the rabies clinic that we had on Saturday
Okay.
morning, which was a success, and we had 6 dogs, 1 cat, 1 ferret.
Nice.
I think next year we're going to try to get the advertising out there a little a little better to attract more, but all the owners were appreciative. All the animals were behaved, and I think that the students had a great learning experience too. There were 3 veterinarians and about 10 or 12 students that all got to participate and learn. So
That is awesome.
and then they're hoping
Yeah.
to do it again next year.
Do you have to register a ferret like you do a dog?
Ferret was actually a walk-in.
So you're not sure. That's
And
awesome.
but it wasn't.
Oh, they are. That's cool.
It wasn't busy, so
You learned
He was
something.
driving by. And
That's great. Very good.
But the students were they were excellent.
Oh, good. I agree. I think it'd be great to get the word out there a little early and have something like that. That's awesome. Anything else for? I just like to skip, things on the agenda. Any old business, new business to mention?
This is Karen. Nothing else. I was going to ask Dan about the rabies clinic, and then I was going to ask about the Ultramart. So
Yes.
those were the 2 I thought of.
Great.
What about the opioid settlement? I saw that there was an email that the town of Grafton received some funds regarding that.
I think we're going to put that on the agenda next month to discuss further about what to do with that. We had, a few different things to consider on that. So,
Okay.
unless anybody had anything for today on that.
Nope.
And Karen was trying not to scare me away with the first hybrid. Send Karen in person. I'm kidding. I don't scare that easily. I'm kidding. All right.
Been doing wonderful.
Thanks. I have a great support system. Let's see. So, upcoming meetings. Our next meeting is May 1st. I think we said because of the conference room, we're going to probably make that Zoom only, right? Is that? And then our June meeting, we were going to try and find conference room A and via Zoom for June 5th. Okay. If there are no further items for discussion, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
This is Dan. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Second,
This is Bill Muller. I will second that motion.
roll call.
Dan Finn, aye.
Bill Muller, aye.
Karen Gustowski, Govan, I.
Austin Magnan, aye.
Jen Maynard, aye.
Go Yukon.
Always with his basketball. Thanks, everyone.